What's up, guys? Got an old classic for you guys today. And this one, we're going to be doing the Hokage versus the Yonkos. And so for this, I'm going to be using the first four Hokage. Obviously, and I figure it works out nicely because we can have four Yonkos, four Hokage. I'll be using the original four Yonkos as well. So that's going to be Whitebeard, Shanks, Kaido, and Big Mom versus, the first four Hokage. So Hashirama, Tobirama, Sarutobi, and Minato. So, gonna get started right away. So, I think we're gonna start with some general scaling for both verses. So, for the strength scaling of Naruto, I do think that you can pretty consistently get the top tiers to like moon busting level. And my reasoning for this is, Naruto was able to fight against Toneri, and their fight was capable of severely damaging and possibly destroying the moon, which we get through statements, and we can actually like literally see it in the fight scene. And so I think that it's probably not very contentious to say that Naruto's chakra is primarily coming from Kurama. I don't think it's an exaggeration at all. I don't. But okay, the point I mean to make is, Naruto's chakra pool mainly comes from Kurama, and Hashirama was very easily capable of throwing Kurama around with his wood style techniques. So by that logic, Naruto and Kurama should scale to the moon level. Hashirama should scale to Kurama and probably even above. And therefore, Hashirama and other top tiers of Naruto should scale to like moon busting levels. That being said, it's worth acknowledging that I do think that Hashirama is probably head and shoulders above the other Hokage in terms of AP. But they should be at least like relative to him. And like to the extent that they would be capable of hurting him in a fight, and he them, of course. Like they're not. He's not like a whole power tier above them, right? They're all in the same verse, and they are all like the top shinobi of their generations. But again, Hashirama is very clearly going to be the strongest among them. With his power even being comparable to like Obito, though Obito stayed to be stronger. And again, like to kind of reinforce my point, like the Hokage were all capable of fighting against Obito. They weren't like instantly fodderized. They were able to like be like an active threat to him. And even though like obviously they couldn't beat him in a fight, they were capable of fighting him, right? So they should by all means be in the same ballpark as Hashirama is what I mean to say. Then in terms of speed, there are two different ways you can go about the speed scaling in Naruto. I think that you could comfortably get the end of series to be light speed or like faster than light, primarily through characters like the Raikage, who is confirmed to be light speed in the data books, and characters like Minato being like very casually faster than him and capable of, kind of like completely evading him and outclassing him in terms of speed. And the other Hokage should be like around this level as well, probably above the Raikage, although obviously Minato would probably be the fastest among the Hokage. The other line of scaling, and this is one that I've heard echoed a few times, is the whole like cack stalking thing with Naruto's feat being able to power the Shinobi Alliance. But this relies on one, I think, like faulty proposition, which is that chakra is directly, chakra directly affects your speed and power, right? And so there's obviously a basis for this. It is also directly stated in like the original Naruto series, but to be honest, there are a lot of things that are stated in original Naruto that don't really hold up to Shippuden. An example being that, the third Hokage was the strongest Hokage of all time. Like very clearly and demonstrably not true. But I digress. I do think that we have enough feats and showings in the series to say that chakra does not, like, while it definitely affects your speed and your obviously, and your strength, it is not like a directly one-to-one where if X character has more chakra, he is X amount faster and X degree stronger. Like the clearest example of that is probably like Tsunade and the Raikage. Raikage is clearly faster than Tsunade, and Tsunade is clearly stronger than the Raikage, right? Can't even really say who has more chakra. I would imagine it's Tsunade, being a Senju, but like it doesn't matter. Raikage is still faster than her, and there's no debating that. So based on that, I think that you can't really say like, if Naruto's able to power this many people by this much, then he should be like XX times faster than light. It just doesn't quite work to me. But it also, I think, is pretty reinforced that a lot of the characters in that final arc were using light speed attacks, and those attacks were considered like pretty impressive. Like Madara's Light Fang attack, which he used at point blank, to be fair, but Naruto being able to evade that like very comfortably puts Naruto in its high tiers at light speed, but I don't think you can get it drastically above light speed. Now, for One Piece, the power scaling, there are, again, two ways you could go about this. One where I think it's kind of silly and maybe a little disingenuous, and one where it's a little more honest, right? And we'll start with the disingenuous one, which is scaling Whitebeard to the entire One Piece planet. I do think if you are of this opinion that I shouldn't say anything disparaging, but I do think that it's a little weirdly inconsistent to be putting Whitebeard at this level of power. And there's a lot of different reasonings for that. One, the statement itself is like decently vague. Blah, blah, blah. Whitebeard has the power to destroy the world. What does it mean? Does he mean destroy the world physically? Does he mean he has the power to completely turn the world on its head? It doesn't matter, right? It's just a little inconsistent. It's an outlier feat is kind of another big problem with it, right? So, for example, like, what is the next strongest feat we have? I guess we have, like, Kaido being able to bust mountains with his, like, full power attack. We have Whitebeard turning over Marineford, I guess. Like, if you really want to sit here and say, like, One Piece is planet busting because of that statement, well, then Naruto is also planet busting because of that statement. Because in, like, one of the first data books we get, the Nine Tails is capable of turning the world to ash. Okay? So if you want to go that route, then just know that Naruto characters have the strength to stand up to it. But I think that arguing that either is like straight planetary from these statements is just silly. I think Naruto has more of an argument to be made based on its feats and like actual demonstrable showings of like the moon busting. Whereas One Piece has this one statement and the next biggest feat is like, like Garp punching the size of a city out with his in his fight with Kuzan, right? So I think that generally I would put Naruto's scaling like a little above One Piece's scaling in terms of pure power, but I don't think it's so much stronger that it completely like disavows the fight or like makes the fight like completely lopsided, right? I think that Naruto's maybe like a little stronger, but I would generally put them around the same. And again, there is a little bit of variance among the characters in One Piece in terms of their strength. Kaido is said to be the strongest like living being. So like in terms of pure strength, he should be a little above Whitebeard. And it also feels that Whitebeard should be above the other Yonkos, being Big Mom and Shanks in terms of pure power. But a lot of this is also very like hearsay. We don't really know for sure. Big Mom does seem to be on some level like very comparable to Kaido. And so, I would say that at least among Big Mom, Kaido, and Whitebeard, they're probably all around like very close to the same levels of like pure strength. Whereas Shanks, we would have to wait and see his like showings, but I was never under the impression that his physical strength was really what made him such a powerful Yonko anyway, right? So basically, what I mean to say is these guys are probably capping around mountain level, maybe island level, depending on how big you think Marineford is. I think Marineford could probably be comfortably said to be like island level, but they, in my opinion, are not getting much higher than that, unless you're using like weird, vague statements or just winking like crazy. In terms of speed, and this is again going to be a point of contention, we have, I guess, a lot of the consensus in the community for scaling One Piece is okay. Luffy was able to react to Kuma's his like light based attack. Dodged it and said that's too slow. And then this version of Luffy is base, and we get multipliers for his later forms. He obviously gets faster throughout the series. I do think that there is an argument to be made that his reaction to the attack is more so aim dodging as opposed to like actual just outspeeding light, right? And I think this is especially true because, obviously he has observation haki at this point. And, if he's using his observation haki, then obviously he's going to have some sort of precognition and be able to dodge an attack. Too slow might just be like a bit of a misnomer for like, that's not going to work. Just because, he has that observation haki. You could disagree with that, and that's fine. But my other point that I need to make is Kizaru, who is, I think, undeniably a top tier in the verse, in terms of stats and just like fighting ability in general, is, again, this might be contentious to say, I think like kind of hard capped at light speed, right? He's literally a light based fighter. His attacks are all light based. His attacks are stated countless times to be light speed. And I think if you want to say like, oh, Kizaru is obviously multiple faster times in light, or light is faster in the One Piece verse, then you're coping a bit. I think that generally, like Naruto, I can put One Piece comfortably at light speed. So to summarize, I think Naruto is kind of by a good degree stronger than One Piece. Comparing mountain busting to moon busting, right? But in terms of speed, and again, I'm of the opinion that when characters are of the same general speed tier, we shouldn't really like look for the numbers because it's just messy and it's silly. So I would say that they're roughly equivalent in terms of speed, at least among the top characters, right? So I think Kizaru is going to be like about relative to the Hokage, who should be light speed. And you could make an argument that maybe Kaido, Big Mom, and the like shouldn't be as fast as Kizaru. But, they're all top tier characters. I'm going to say that they should be at least capable of fighting light speed characters. So I'll put the speeds at like roughly equivalent, obviously with some exceptions and nuance for like the flying raging technique. But we will get into that in a moment. So now we're going to move on to the hacks. And so it's also worth acknowledging I will not be including Genjutsu or like Haki knockout in this because I think those are both very boring and they're not really what people are here to discuss. But I guess just to summarize, Genjutsu only works if you have chakra. Haki, like Blitz, is gonna apparently work if you just don't have Haki. So if you're like, I guess, including these, then there's maybe more of an argument for One Piece winning. But again, I think that generally people talk about this, they don't like to consider these things because it makes the fight boring. So going into the techniques that each character has, I'm going to go very briefly through this because there's like 8 characters to talk about, and Naruto characters they're very crazy in terms of the amount of abilities that they have each individually. Tobirama is got maybe like 3 things of his kit that are probably the most important to talk about. One is going to be his general wood style. He's able to control like tree branches and stuff, but like on a pretty massive scale. Something he's able to do this with this power is create his 1,000-hand Manju, which is like a summoning of sorts that is like his highest AP attack and the one that's capable of fighting and hurting like a heavily amped Ninetales when he was fighting against Madara. He also is capable of creating wood clones, and as we've seen with Madara, wood clones are like way more durable than shadow clones, and to the extent that Madara was able to fight against the 5 Kage all at once with his wood clone alone. And then as soon as you brought the other wood clones, they started freaking out because they knew that they were cooked. But like basically, they're almost identical to him in terms of power, and they're a little lower than him in terms of durability, but still like pretty nuts. And it's like a really big deal for when you're fighting against characters who are at least like among the same tier as you, if you can just create clones of yourself, right? Aside from that, he also has some pretty ridiculous healing. His healing was stated to even be like above or surpassing like at least like base Tsunade before she uses the 1,000 healing by Madara himself, who said that Hashirama's natural healing was just ridiculous. And we see this later on because Hashirama cells get passed around almost as frequently as eyeballs in Naruto. So we see that characters that have Hashirama cells are able to survive like massive amounts of damage. Tobirama is another very powerful shinobi, although obviously often gets overshadowed because Hashirama is so much stronger than him. But even still, where Tobirama lacks in pure strength, he does make up for it in his like pure versatility. He created shadow clones as well as like a majority of the jutsus that exist in the Narutoverse. But the main ones we see him use are shadow clones, the flying raging technique, which I'll detail a little more when we talk about Minato, and obviously his water style jutsu. And so worth acknowledging that some people may think like, oh, water style should affect, devil fruit users. But I think that it's a hard point to sell because there's no reason for us to believe that the water that water style users produces are salt water, which would be like necessary for shutting down devil fruit users. So we won't consider that in this fight. I don't think it changes the outcome whether or not he does have access to that, but just worth addressing that point because that's something that will probably come up. Sarutobi is said to have mastered every single jutsu in Konoha, kind of a lot like Tobirama, but again, we only see him use so many techniques. Naruto has a lot of this where there's a lot of characters that are like, oh, I have a million techniques in my repertoire, and then we only see them end up using like 4. There's Kakashi, Tobirama, Sarutobi, Orochimaru. Like, it's just a weird trope. I think Kishimoto is just too obsessed with the idea of people being like super prolific jutsu users, but that's okay. In terms of what Sarutobi has, he has the Reaper Death Seal, which is his most powerful attack, but obviously takes him out of the fight, where he's capable of sealing his and somebody else's soul, essentially killing both of them. It's not exactly killing them, but they're not going to be able to fight after that, and their souls will be sealed forever, right? Aside from that, he has shown usage of like all the elemental techniques, and he does use them pretty frequently. So that's fire, lightning, earth, water, and air, right? So he's capable of using all of those, and capable of using them pretty well in fights. Although hard to say how much application like all of those are going to have in this fight specifically, but it's something nice to note that he has in his repertoire. And then we have Monkey King Enma, which is his summoning, which can also turn into a staff that's like infinitely extendable by Sarutobi. Basically just like a monkey that fights alongside him. It's pretty cool, but Sarutobi is, in my opinion, the least impressive of the 4 Hokage, which isn't to say that he's weak, but the other 4 do seem to outclass him in terms of like the kind of stuff they bring to the table. Although the Reaper Death Seal is really nice to have, especially against characters who might be able to tank hits. It's kind of like a durability negating attack. Minato is very similar, where he also has the Reaper Death Seal, but in addition to that, he uses the Flying Rajan technique, which allows him to basically teleport to any place that has his specific insignia on it, right? So he attaches these to his kunai, he throws them, and he's able to teleport to them. Otherwise, he's also able to just leave that marking wherever he wants. We see it in his fights with like Kakashi and stuff, that he's able to like basically imprint the technique, I don't know what you call it, like sign on him or on a target, and then he's able to teleport to that location regardless of distance, and that teleportation is instantaneous, right? So Minato is able to use this technique in conjunction with the second Hokage because the second Hokage invented it, although Minato did like admittedly refine it, but they are both able to use it together, which is really nice, and it really does play to their synergy when we see them do it in the war arc. Now, it is also worth noting that for this battle, I'm going to be assuming alive versions of these characters, so they're not going to be like, immortal, regenerating, infinite chakra, whatever comes with it. They're going to be alive versions of themselves, and they'll have access to all of the techniques that they had in their prime or while they were alive. With, I guess, the exception of Sarutobi, because there might be an argument to be made that he isn't in his prime when we see him because he's old and decrepit, but we'll have to use the version of him that we've seen and kind of just make assumptions about it. Now, for One Piece, the general abilities to go over first are going to be, I guess, 2 of the most important, because One Piece characters don't really have as many abilities as Naruto characters, which makes them a lot nicer to talk about, of course. But we have Ornament Haki and Observation Haki. Ornament Haki is going to be the ability to really harden your skin. And the amount that people can harden their skin in One Piece does depend on how strong they are in general. But the Ornament Haki does not take their durability to a level where they're like tiers more durable than they were before, right? If a character is like roughly mountain level durability without Ornament Haki, they're going to be like mountain level plus with Ornament Haki, right? They still take damage. They just take less of it. And it really also like mainly benefits that they're able to resist like stabbing and slashing attacks because their skin is basically like hardened steel or iron. So they could still get bludgeoned pretty consistently. As for Observation Haki, it's very simple to explain. Basically just the ability to see the future. We haven't seen anybody of the Yonko, aside from Shanks, use Observation Haki, but there is reason to believe that they should all have some degree of it. Although Observation Haki is a little different from the other forms of Haki, whereas it doesn't seem that it's necessarily something that everyone is guaranteed just because they have high levels of Haki. So we'll probably mostly be considering it for Shanks as opposed to for all of the Yonko as a whole. But they should all have Ornament Haki for sure. Whitebeard is, again, most of these characters are very simple to explain their powers. Whitebeard is probably the physically strongest, if not second physically strongest because of Kaido, but His power is the Quake fruit, which lets him create earthquakes and kind of just do all sorts of shenanigans that would be involved with that. Really just increases his AP. It's like the nth degree. That's really all there is to it, right? He's able to create earthquakes. He's able to create tsunamis using earthquakes. And his destructive power is stated to be, quote unquote, capable of destroying the world, but we've discussed that earlier. Kaido, his devil fruit is able to turn him into a giant dragon, which increases his durability and strength, which is already pretty impressive, and I would say like pretty consistently mountain level, like with his thunder bagua attack and whatnot. He's just like obviously league stronger than any character that Luffy has fought before this, and it shows. Big Mom should be comparable to Kaido as she was able to fight him, but she has two different techniques that kind of are added to her pool, which is one, she has her like little cloud friends, which is like a fire cloud and a lightning cloud. So I guess in some sense she has like those two elements added to her attacks. And she also has soul manipulation. But the problem with her is that her soul manipulation is like conditional on the person being scared of her. And while that definitely works for the average person in One Piece, the Hokage are like seasoned veterans, and they really should not be capable of getting their soul ripped out like that, right? And maybe you can make an argument that she would be maybe like immune to the Reaper Death Seal because she has her own control over souls, and that's fair. But I don't think any of the characters in the Naruto, I guess, like group are going to be using the Reaper Death Seal on Big Mom specifically. She is probably the least threatening of the Yonkos. And now for Shanks. Shanks really is just like the hockey master. That's kind of his claim to fame. We've seen his divine departure, which is like him able to use his conqueror's hockey to just absolutely obliterate people with like a very high AP attack. He's able to destroy Eustace Kid with it. And then also in that fight with Eustace Kid, we see his observation hockey. And this one's a little debatable, but the way the story is written out, it does seem that Shanks probably has observation hockey that surpasses I'm forgetting his name, Katakuri, right? Where Katakuri was like 3 seconds into the future, Shanks seems to be like a full 10, and that seems fair. Like he's able to, I guess, like precog the destruction of his boat from Eustace's blast, who like himself stated that I'm gonna annihilate you in 10 seconds. Hard to say how accurate that is. Maybe Eustace isn't good at counting, but we should probably take that as it is because it does feel like the author is trying to be deliberate here. In trying to give us an idea for how good Shanks is at using hockey, right? So that puts Shanks at like observation hockey level 10 seconds, which, you know, is honestly a very strong ability against characters who are like roughly comparable or like less obviously than you in speed, because if you're able to see 10 seconds into the future, like at a certain point, they really shouldn't be able to touch you. So with all of that out of the way, I think we have talked about enough to really kind of get an idea as to who I think is going to win. But I want to explain a few points. The first is that, you know, I do think that the observation hockey from Shanks is probably going to be among the biggest problems for the Hokage to deal with. Even Minato's like instant transportation abilities and stuff are going to be kind of nullified by that observation hockey. As we can see how Minato kind of uses this technique, it's usually just to kind of get the drop on people. But if people know where he's going to teleport, they're going to be able to react to it pretty quickly, and they could probably even catch him on surprise. Because obviously these Naruto characters aren't going to be familiar with the idea of observation hockey. Some of them have definitely fought against Sharingan users, but even if you have experience against Sharingan users, like this is like a different level of precognition from what we can see Sharingan users using, at least in my opinion. The main problem for the Yonkos, I think, is going to be Hashirama's wood clones, where, again, like these wood clones are very comparable to their user in terms of strength and to an extent durability as well. So, you know, these wood clones are going to be a serious problem because I do think that in terms of AP, they are stronger than all of the Yonkos. And then in terms of durability, they should be, again, like around the same level, if not greater. And then in terms of speed, they should be able to keep up with the Yonkos pretty well, especially Big Mom and Kaido don't really seem to be like super fast fighters. And this also brings up a point that I think is really important to establish, which is that I think the Yonkos in general, maybe with the exception of Shanks, rely heavily on just being like ridiculously stronger than everybody else in the verse. Whereas the Hokage, while ridiculously strong for sure, with the exception of maybe Hashirama, like they can't take attacks from random like ninja, right? If Minato, despite being, you know, one of the strongest shinobi of all time, got hit by like a kunai throw from just like a normal dude, that it would hurt him, right? Like he's not like super durable and able to like withstand attacks from other characters in Naruto. Similarly, or I mean, I guess on the other hand, the One Piece Yonkos, like Kaido and Big Mom are not dodging attacks often, right? They're literally like tanking every attack that gets thrown at them, but they're just so much stronger than everybody else that they don't need like technique or to evade. They just kind of, tank everything. So by that logic, I do think that the Naruto characters probably do have an edge in terms of both battle IQ and like, actual fighting abilities. So we're in a fight where they're even like equalized stats. I do think that they have like a ridiculously a large advantage over the One Piece characters, at least these One Piece characters specifically, because again, they're even if they're as strong and as fast, they're just so much more experienced at fighting against people that can like actually threaten them. And the last point to also consider is that the Hokage are pretty experienced and pretty good at fighting with each other. Even though, I guess, in this hypothetical, we're going to be using the alive version, so technically they will not have had experience fighting together. Hashirama knows Tobirama. Tobirama knows Hashirama. They fought together in war. Sarutobi is also familiar with the two before him, although the two aren't like super familiar with Sarutobi's abilities because he was young when he saw them. And then Minato obviously knows all the abilities of the Hokage above him, whereas Sarutobi also knows Minato's abilities. So like they're all decently familiar with each other's techniques, at least like going backwards, right? Where fourth knows first's techniques pretty well. But even when they are fighting in the war arc, even though like not all of them have fought together before, they were very very adept at like kind of working off of each other's techniques and skills. Minato and Tobirama were probably the biggest example of like a synergy, even though Tobirama has no idea who Minato is, right? They were able to use the flying Rajan technique in conjunction with each other, and they were like very good at it, right? So that versatility and that, I guess, like togetherness is more than we've seen demonstrated from the Yonkos. Technically, Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido were all rock pirates, so they did definitely have experience fighting together, but we haven't really seen anything that really makes me think that they would be particularly good at it. Even when Big Mom and Kaido are together in here I am forgetting the names of the arcs. Sorry, I'm forgetting, but even when Big Mom and Kaido are fighting together in like the Japanese themed island, right? We don't really get a sense that they're like particularly good at fighting with each other. We just get the vague idea that they know each other and are probably familiar with each other's abilities. They're definitely not Naruto characters in terms of fighting together, right? So with all of that said, I do think I'm going to give the win pretty handedly to the Hokage. And if you disagree, I invite you to come join us in the Discord. Let me know what you think. Tell me how wrong I am. And provide your own line of scaling. Because I do think this is maybe a slightly unpopular take. I think generally people put One Piece characters like head and shoulders above Naruto characters in terms of scaling. But I do think that my logic behind this is pretty sound. The only main point of contention I can imagine people are going to be is, well, the raw stats. I think a lot of people put One Piece like head and shoulders above faster than light speed. And then like some people are saying like, planet to dwarf star level like AP on characters like like Whitebeard, which I think is a little, wild, but to each their own. So if you guys disagree or you want to talk about it, please drop a comment or join the Discord. I'll leave it in the description below. Aside from that, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a blessed day.